tardes, les damos la bienvenida a todos los que están hoy aquí compartiendo esta sesión acerca de las voces diversas en los infantes. Esperemos que disfruten esta presentación.
Shukran, apoyo. Nina lulungani Lucy Lake Stephen, an apoyo minne lungun libini ka chokaman. Apoyo.
Welcome to our session on diverse voices in early childhood. We're glad you're here.
Karibuni kwa kikao hiki. Kiko hapa, tunashukuru kuhusu watoto wachanga. Tunafurahia kuwaona. Karibuni.
Assalamu alaikum. Magacayga waxaa waaye Zainab. Meesha waxaan ugu soo dhaweynaynaa carruurtayda. Gacmo furan ugu soo dhawaada. Assalaamu alaikum.
Hello and welcome. My name is Jane Ellison. We're going to introduce ourselves and then we'll move on with our presentation today. I am project manager for Greater St. Cloud Area Thrive, and for this particular project that we're talking about today, Thrive is the organization that developed what we're calling the Access Project, and that's what we'll be talking about today.
And I'm Terry Estrom. I'm a professor here at St. Cloud State in Communication Sciences and Disorders. And I'm also the evaluator of the grant that allows us to work on this Access project, which we'll describe today.
My name is Lucy Stephen, Lucy Lake Stephen. I am presenting United South Sudan Association. We are working together in planning this project for the Access project. Thank you.
Mi nombre es Mayuri Valles y yo trabajo para Casa Guadalupe Multicultural Community. Es una organización que trabaja en el área de Cold Spring dando servicio a los latinos. My name is Mayuri Valles and I work basically with Latino community in Cold Spring area, giving services and programs to our Latino community in Cold Spring.
My name is Beth Kinyua-Gadetu. I work with a group of women, African Women Alliance. It's a group of women from all African nations that have come together and we're working with this team.
My name is Zainab Dahir and I'm a member of African Women Alliance and I'm representing Somali women here.
Thank you. Is this on? Is this on?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, good. So, welcome again. We're going to be talking about the Access Project, and we wanted to start by introducing ourselves and starting with the various languages that are represented here on the panel. Before I get started on the Access Project specifically, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the organizations that made it possible for us to do this project. We have staff and volunteers from the African Women's Alliance, Casa Guadalupe, Perseverancia, Somali Women's Association, and United South Sudan who've been involved. We've had parents who participated in our forums. We'll be talking about the forums today. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota Foundation Growing Up Healthy grant was the primary grant that helped us do the Access Project, and we're still in the midst of doing it. The Initiative Foundation here in Minnesota, the HOPSI Stay Strong grant, funded the forums that we'll be talking about. St. Cloud State University Faculty Grant helped to fund the forums, and Greater St. Cloud Area Thrive, the organization that I said that I was project manager for. So just to give you a quick overview, we wanted to say that our presentation will integrate stories, pictures, and personal experience throughout as we describe the process and results of the cultural forums that were conducted in our community. And it says something about the handout you may have printed from the 0 to 3 website. Ignore that. There actually is, Terry, is the handout going to be on the website for this? Yes. The handout will be available on the website that was designed for this particular presentation. We had an opportunity to present this at a national conference, and that's the 0 to 3 conference that was there. And But what we wanted to let you know was that we're doing this with stories and personal experience and conversation. And that if you're interested in more of the statistical information, the information that will be posted on the website will have more of the statistical information that came out of the forums. So you'll get some of that here today, but we really thought that the most important piece and what we learned the most from were the voices of the parents who were involved in our forums. And so that's really one of the things that we wanted to bring to you, were the voices of the parents that were involved in the forums. And you may have noticed that this PowerPoint looks a little different, and that's because it's something called a Prezi. Some of you may have heard of it before or not, but a lot of the way that we're doing this presentation really mirrors the work that we're doing as the Access Grant. So I wanted to say a few things about how our presentation mirrors our process. The first thing was the diverse introductions. We did ask everybody to introduce, to say hello and welcome in their own language. And that was because we wanted to point out that we try to include diversity from the very start. This wasn't something where we started with something else and then decided to pull in some diverse people, but we started with diverse community members right from the start, and I think that's been an important part of the value of the work that we've been able to do. The Prezi that I said before, this way of doing the presentation, it reflects our both holistic and non-linear approach. And I think as we go along today with our presentation, you'll find that to some extent, it is a little non-linear. We're not starting from the beginning and going to the end. As a matter of fact, one of the slides that I'll share with you very soon tells you the end before we even get to the beginning. So one of the reasons that we're doing that is because, again, in terms of our process as a group, as an Access team, we have found that our process has to be something that we sometimes call, and it came from some training that we received, a chaotic path. A little bit of chaos, a little bit of order mixed together, and you have a chaotic path. We found that as a diverse group, we've really had to embrace not having things go exactly as we expect, not being able to always do things in a linear fashion. And so this particular style of presentation, we hope kind of mirrors or reflects that. The stories and songs, the fact that we're using stories and songs instead of just statistical information really reflects our focus on relationship building and alternative learning. So as part of the process that we took in order to come up with some of the information that we came up with here, we really have been focusing a lot on relationship building. We have found that relationship building is the key to the work that we've done. And I'll show you a Venn diagram that's been really important to us too. Again, this came from some training that we received early on. It's called Art of Hosting, and the training specifically has focused on leadership, how to lead diverse groups, or in our case at least, diverse groups. And one of the things that we learned early on was that it was important in leadership to always be considering relationships, co-learning, and work. That we needed to combine all three of those in the work that we do. And we really thought that that fit perfectly for the project that we were working on. So we have taken this to heart, and every single time we get together as a group to work on this Access project, which you'll learn a little bit more about in a minute, we make sure that our agenda has a relationships component, a co-learning component, and a work component to it, because we found that we need to be working on all of those in order to move forward as a group. It's interesting because we're going to be sharing with you about our planning year, which was basically last year, in which we did some forums. But now we're in our implementation year, and we're coming back around to having to say, we've kind of lost track of relationships, we need to put some more energy into relationships again. So it's so important for us to constantly be looking back at this diagram and remembering that relationships, co-learning, and work all have to be part of the process that we're doing here. Terry's saying, do I want to define co-learning? So co-learning for us really means that we are all learning from each other. So in other words, I have something that I'm bringing to the process, and every other person on the team has something that they're bringing to the process, and we're learning from each other, as well as learning together about things. So it's been really important to us that as we move forward in the next steps of what we're doing in our Access project, that we continue to learn across cultures. And that's one of the things that we focus on here. So this is the end of the presentation at the beginning. Like I said, it's kind of chaotic path, but we're going to tell you a little bit about, kind of in a nutshell, what the process was and what we learned. And then we'll go into some more specifics, but more stories and some of those parent voices that we wanted to bring to you. This project, the Access project, is specifically focusing on early childhood, so particularly birth to 3, so very little kids, in immigrant and refugee communities in the St. Cloud area, and whether they have appropriate access to services. That's really what we were taking a look at, and we'll say more about that as we go along. But in order to address that question, we needed to figure out a process to do that. And in this particular project, the process included the fact that it's all about relationships. This is what we learned. By the end of the planning year, we learned that it's all about relationships. That's the only way we can do this work. That we needed to involve diverse leaders from the start, and to use some of these art of hosting techniques. And we'll refer to those as we go along, but the Venn diagram that I showed you was one of the art of hosting techniques that we used. And at the end of the planning year, the results that we had were that we wanted to develop diverse professionals in the birth to 3 field. And basically that was about saying, you know, if we're going to be having people working with infants and toddlers and their families in immigrant and refugee populations in the community, that we need to have immigrant and refugee community members who can do that work. So we wanted to make sure that they were actually licensed to do the work and could go out and do the work. Another result that we had was that we wanted to create co-learning opportunities between diverse families and professionals using creative communication, skits, songs, parent cafes. So really finding a different way of communicating across the diverse families and professionals that are in the community. So that was the second result that we came up with. And the third was to support interpreters' knowledge of the field of early childhood. When working with interpreters, one of the things that is very frustrating is when the interpreter doesn't know the field, and then it's very difficult for that interpretation to work well. So that's a little bit of the end. And so we're going to go ahead and do a couple of stories right now. And these stories are answering the question, why was it important for us to take a look at how to expand access to services for birth to 3 children, immigrant and refugee children and their families in the St. Cloud area. And so Terry's going to start with her story.
So one summer I was supervising a speech language pathology student in one of her practicum assignments. And we were serving a Somali family in their home for a 2-year-old child that had some characteristics of autism. Initially, I thought, going into this home, I thought that the hard part would be working with an interpreter. But then as we worked with them, I soon realized that the biggest challenge was trying to help the family share with me and with their child some of the first words that kids learn in Somali and some of the first songs and finger plays that kids learn in Somali. It wasn't that I was trying to teach their child English or the first words in English or even English social games or songs. And so that was a challenge to come together with the parents and have them understand that I didn't want to teach them my way of doing things. I wanted to learn their ways of doing things so they could help their child.
And so on the bottom there, it just says, early intervention professionals experience barriers to providing services to immigrant and refugee children. So that was one of the reasons why it was important for us to do this project. And now Julie will share a story.
I am an immigrant since 1991, and when I came here to the United States, I have 2 children. My 3rd and 4th children born here, and
One of them, we experienced that was a little different in his growing up time. We don't know what was going on exactly. We know that something was different until she get into first grade and we start having some calls from the school that something was different in her learning process. At that time, we know that she was different. We don't know exactly how to name his difference. We know that she's sensitive to noise, to light, to temperatures, but we can't really name what was going on. I'm a teacher from my country, Mexico, but I never really work with children with special needs. I can name what my own children was happening in her learning process. I have a parent educator coming to my house, and thanks to her, I started learning what was the name of my children's ability. I don't want to call her a disability. At this point, it's an ability, I guess. She is being equipped with a different learning process, and I need to recognize that. It was a process. I have many feelings involved. In the beginning, I guess, was silent, discomfort, guilt, shame. I can talk with my parents about that because I feel very guilty. What I did to this child. Maybe they will be blaming. We told you, don't move to America. There is weird things in. Well, I need to accept and educate myself in this area. I need to educate my husband and my other children to recognize and accept that we have a difference and we need to be sure that we do accommodations for each of us. I need to start trusting my parent educator with my own feelings and experience and inexperience too. We learn together the process of learning to be an advocate. I learned to be an advocate for my own case. We know that the school system is complicated. The special education system is more complicated. We need to learn acronymics, new words, terminology, and term autism. What it means. What it means for my daughter, 6 years old. Could she continue being in the school? What is the pieces of trust that the school is building with me and my family? Do they understand my culture? Do they care that I need an interpreter for every meeting? How we will be building all these pieces? Take us years. But the co-learning piece, I guess, was in place. My parent educator was open to come one time a week for a couple hours and sit down with me and explore all the possibilities and situations that we will be confronting in the next years. It was an easy access door to services that probably she doesn't have all the answers at the moment, but I have a lot of questions. And when I don't have a question or the ability to articulate a question, she was ready to help me to look for that. The lesson here is that I guess each of us need to advocate for our own needs, but take a community to support our own needs and to support the education of our children.
Thank you, Majuli. So immigrant and refugee families in our community may have children who have developmental delays and want support and help, but they experience multiple barriers. So that just gives you, with those stories, it gives you an idea of kind of where we started with this process. It was saying there's a need, and what do we do to meet that need? And rather than decide that somehow the professionals in early childhood know the answer to that question, what we chose to do was to really take a planning year and do some cultural forms to address those needs. So now I'm going to do a little bit of information that is a little bit more linear. Oh. So we were lucky enough to receive a grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation of Minnesota to spend a planning year for our Access project. And so these are just some of the goals of the planning year of this group. The long-term goal is expanded access to early intervention services for immigrant refugee families and their children. So our broad annual goal, our goal for the year, was to develop a process of community trust building and mutual education across cultures, because we felt that was the first step to figuring out how to do this work. And then the concrete goal that we had for that year was to complete the planning process and end up with an inclusive, clearly developed and inclusive project implementation plan. So that was our goal for that year, was to figure out how to do this work and what that needed to look like. And this gives you an idea of the creation of what we call the cultural forms, which we're talking about today. Along the side there is Thrive. Thrive is a collaboration of early childhood professionals. It's a group of early childhood professionals who work together on a variety of different projects. The Thrive leadership team had the goal of addressing diversity in all of their projects and thinking about what are the needs of the diverse families in our community. With that diversity goal, Thrive did an initial Somali forum. We contracted with SASWA, St. Cloud Area Somali Women's Association, to conduct some forums in the Somali community with parents of very young children. And the questions that were asked in those forums were really about what is the need. We're working with really little kids. We're talking about really little kids and families. What are the needs out there? So that was our initial Somali forum. After that, we were able to take the results of that forum and to go to Blue Cross Blue Shield and actually secure funding for the planning year. And in that process, it was decided that that Somali forum was one little piece, but boy, we really wanted to go out to 4 different immigrant refugee communities in the area. We chose the communities in which we went to District 742 and said which languages are spoken most in the school district so that we knew where the children were in the community. And so we chose the communities to work with based on which languages there were the most children in District 742 that were speaking those languages. So the communities that we ended up wanting to work with was the Somali community, the Sudanese community, the Latina community, and the Asian community. And as you'll see as we go through this, one of our failures has been in making a good connection with the Asian community and having their participation. So just to let you know that just right up in front. So then just taking a look at what the goals of the Access Project are. And this is the mission, vision, and goals of the Access Project. You'll see the goals at the bottom really speak to some of the things that I talked about at the very beginning. Diverse licensed early childhood professionals, access and cultural sensitivity and early intervention, and looking at expanding sensitivity and competence of interpreters. But this gives you an idea of what the goal of the whole project is. So we wanted to start this project by conducting more of these cultural forums like the one we did in the Somali community. And so what we needed to do was to make sure that we got together with community leaders in all of the immigrant refugee communities that we wanted to work with, and to figure out how to conduct cultural forums in each of the communities. This just talks a little bit about the goals of those forums. We did this presentation first, it was as a national presentation, and so with who is our community, I talked about how we are not who you are. So I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. St. Cloud, Minnesota is not like Chicago, Illinois. We were doing the presentation in Washington, D.C. St. Cloud, Minnesota is not like Washington, D.C. So what is it about our community? Who are we? Because I think we really need to be aware of who we are if we're moving forward with this work. So some things, and you probably know this about who we are. We're a small Midwestern town, a city of 60,000, Greater St. Cloud area has about 100,000. I moved here in the 1980s. And I can tell you that I felt out of place because I was not a German Catholic farm family, and it felt to me like absolutely everybody in St. Cloud was a German Catholic farm family. Now, it wasn't absolutely everybody, but it sure seemed like it at the time. and that was definitely the majority of people here. But there's been a huge change in the St. Cloud area, exploding diversity by 2010. This statistic about African American population swelled 283%. That's not incorrect, that is correct. And we included in that statistic, or not we, the people who put together that statistic included United States-born African Americans and also immigrant African Americans. So the point of the statistic is not about that every one of those are the same. It's more about the fact that there's been a huge change here. And that one of the reasons that this is so important for us to be looking at the kind of work that we're doing is because of all of the change. And currently there's about 30% students of color in the St. Cloud Public Schools, just to let you know who's here.
And we want to underline the importance of gathering local data. It's been proved that it's very hard to find local data, and this is for professionals and students from higher level education institutions like St. Cloud State, that we need to work together and get out into the communities in the area to be able to have this real information that we need here. Sometimes it's a lot of information from the cities, but we need to share this data and expand this information locally.
Now we want to hear some some of the parent voices from our community forum on questions about the community.
In Mexico, once you have a baby and are bedridden, many people of your family come and bring you food and take care of you until you heal. There is no support system of this kind in the United States. They are more likely isolated, especially if they don't have family here. We are immigrants. We don't have family here.
We are immigrants, we are refugees and immigrants, refer to America as heaven. So we are trying to work together to support one another so that America will remain heaven to all of us.
When I first arrived here at SSU, I was a student here. I was hungry for 2 days. I did not know where to go shopping, and I did not know how to ask. I spoke English, but it was hard because of my accent. And when I asked, people would tell me, just a couple of blocks, and you'll go and trying to explain to go to cobbles. To me, a couple of blocks is bricks. So where? Oh, yeah, that's what you know. And you know that, of course, now I realize there are food everywhere. You can buy food from the vending machines, but I didn't know then because I hadn't seen things like this in Africa. So it's so good when there is access and resources available.
We want different treatment options besides medication. When I say that, I mean, like back in Africa, we had like common support. You know, it's good to prevent before you get any disease. But you know, even you don't know which kind of disease here, the environment is different, everything is different. So we need common support here.
The South Sudanese women have never experienced the ability to protect and enhance their human rights. If we talk of human rights, I don't know, it seems like we don't know the term even. So human right, we just heard when we came in America that there's a right, but that term we are not using, so we don't have right, human right.
In Mexico, when the umbilical cord falls up, we either put a coin in the navel so it forms well, or tie cloth around their belly to avoid the navel sticking out of a baby. We use this practice over and over. But when we go to the doctor office, we hide what we are doing at home. the question of these women was why we need to hide practices that are been in our family for centuries.
Life is struggle. Whatever you want, you have to struggle. You have to really try your best to get what you want. That is the voice of the women.
So now we'll switch and talk a little bit about more specifically the focus groups, how they were run and what the results were. The focus groups had 5 organizations in total. There were 2 that were from the Latino community and 1 from the African Women's Alliance, 1 from the United South Sudan Association, and 1 from the St. Cloud area Somali Women's Association. These groups basically decided among themselves how they would best conduct their forums. So it wasn't up to us to tell them how it worked best in their own culture to conduct the forums, but rather they came up with those ideas themselves. So throughout the process, we wanted to make sure that we were hearing from the immigrant refugees themselves about what was important to them. We felt there was a risk of getting in a rut of doing it the same old way, the same old American way, or the same old white way. And we wanted to make sure that there was a best fit with the immigrant refugee groups. So just one example of our mindset initially and how things maybe should be done as we thought about it was that initially we thought that among many of the professionals, we thought it would be quick and easy to train these different immigrant groups to be paraprofessionals to work with the kids in the community that we were concerned about. But then there was an aha moment when I realized that we were limiting our what the immigrant refugee groups could do for themselves. We were limiting them by saying that they couldn't be professionals, like an early childhood special ed teacher or a speech language pathologist. And so we decided that was kind of one of the evolving moments that we don't need to limit them to be just paraprofessionals. We can actually work toward increasing their abilities to be successful in a professional type of field. And so part of wanting to hear more about the immigrant refugee voices themselves, we had each group develop the methods that they would use to conduct the focus groups. So we'll hear from a couple of the groups, how they conducted their forums.
At Casa Guadalupe, we decided that, well, we have some years of work with the community. The trust piece was in place, very important piece. It kind of functioned like the filter into the community. If some of the agencies want to come and organize or do some activities with the Latino community, we help to implement it. The trust piece is in place and we use it. Quick and easy are not exactly the words that we utilize in our everyday vocabulary. Our community doesn't really quick. We build relations first. And easy, well, depend what you're talking about. If you work Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, could be easy for you, for your agency, but not exactly for the community. For us, quick and easy means having time to build the trust and the relationship, and then we can start talking about business. Easy, yes, we decide to do the forums, we call the cafe words in a weekend. We do some Saturdays, we did some on Sundays, and I want to describe just one that we organized. It was very intentional. Two of us decided to crash a party. We know that all the people that Sunday was going to be in that party. We know too that at some point during this party on Sunday, nice weather, the men will be going outside to start talking and drinking, and the women will be staying inside the house taking care of the kids. So we decided that will be the moment when we start our cafe world. And I bring the questions, we do copies, and I advise the owner of the house, if with your permission, we can do that. Will be a fun conversation. We bring some food for the party. We collaborate with the food, you know. So we kind of get ready that Sunday, and we crash the party for almost 6 hours. The conversation was great. The men had fun. We was taking care of the kids inside the trailer park, and then we have just a good conversation. We did all in Spanish. No way to start talking another language. Why, if all of us talk in Spanish? We twist the questions, you know. We have initially a plan A, and probably we end up with plan C. We've been very flexible. You need to do that. You need to be very creative at the moment if you really want to obtain the information that you are looking for. And the lesson here is trust and flexibility. You need to know the community who you are working and you are serving in order to record and search for the information that you need.
For us Sudanese, when I was assigned by the tribe to conduct the forum, and they're saying that the forum has to be done like 2 different days, to be organized 2 different days. So I said, okay, these 2 different days, then because we need a lot. When we are gathering together, we need a lot. We need to plan for the daycare, somebody to take care of our kids while we are conducting that. And we need food. We need some material to conduct that forum. We need some, maybe a little bit of gift card to give to the participant as a form of appreciation.
Been researched to death, not by us necessarily, but just by the multiple places where research was happening, and then there wasn't anything that happened afterwards. That was the concern.
So would those professionals already have the information from each different people from different countries about, you know, would they already know something about the culture, or would they just kind of go in as experts, or would they?
No, it was co-learning, so it would be set up more like like a cafe style. So tables were set up, and there would be early childhood professionals along with family members, and there were certain questions that would be asked through facilitation. But we didn't go in there with the sense that we had the answers. It was co-learning. So it was a very cool process. Yes.
So will the Vietnamese voice not be visible, not be audible?
That's,
So if you would like to be the person who joins us, we would love that.
Well, that's the whole issue, and that's a much longer piece.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a
You
big
can't just
question.
ask me because I'm Asian American.
I know.
And, you know, that's not fair.
and we tried finding a lot of different leads. We tried through student organizations and through different Asian Americans that we knew in the community. And they're really, I don't know if we weren't accessing the right people, asking the right people, but we never had anybody that really stepped forward and said, yes, I would like to be part of this.
But what I'd like to say, and I just said that to you, Hetty, because I know you and I'd love you to be part of it, we continue to be open to that happening and working. It's definitely something that we would like to have happen. We just have to take responsibility for the fact that we failed in that regard so far. So we're hoping, we'll see, but it's definitely still a goal. So thanks for asking the question.
Okay, and I know people are excited to get going. So we have one more thing, if you'll bear with us and participate in a song. One of the things that we have tried to do at several of our meetings and to help us learn about other cultures and so on, but to learn songs in other languages and other cultures. And so Majuli is going to share one with us.
These are early childhood songs.
Early
So don't
childhood
worry, we're
songs.
not teaching you like some really complex song. And we're only doing the first few words here. We're not going to do the whole thing. So Majuli's going to teach us this one.
This is a very popular song that we use for toddlers to play around the playground. You can join me. I'm just going to give you some notes. It goes like that. A la víbora, víbora de la mar, por aquí pueden pasar. You follow me with that tone, okay? 1, 2, 3, together. A la víbora, víbora de la mar, por aquí pueden pasar. Los de adelante corren mucho y los de atrás se quedarán tras, tras, tras. Una mexicana que fruta vendía.